All right, so let's have Angela. Why don't you go to the first side? Thank you. And I'll help you with your chair.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. You can sit right there.
Thank you.
Okay? Go ahead. Very good. Thank you. All righty. Okay, thank you for coming, everybody. I'm attorney Gloria Allred, and this is Danielle, and she will read her statement after I read mine. And this is Angela, and she will read her statement after Danielle. Then we'll take some questions. Also with me, behind me, is my partner Dolores Leal and my partner Michael Morocco. And the two of them and also myself, we will answer questions afterwards. So recently, a number of young women contacted me about what they allege was inappropriate sexual harassment and misconduct by Dr. George Tindle, a gynecologist who was assigned to examine and treat them when they were students at the University of Southern California, USC. Today, we're filing a lawsuit against USC on behalf of one of those students, and we're also calling on USC to conduct an independent investigation of the very serious allegations made by these students who allege that for many years, USC knew of inappropriate conduct by Dr. Tindle, but failed to take appropriate measures to protect innocent students who were under his care. The lawsuit which we have filed this morning against Dr. Tyndall and USC is on behalf of Danielle Mohazab. Danielle was given an appointment to see Dr. Tyndall because of her regular gynecologist at USC was not available. Her appointment with Dr. Tyndall on April 4th, 2016 was for the purpose of discussing medication and for a sexually transmitted disease test. Danielle will provide details of the sexual harassment to which she alleges she was subjected, and also the remarks made to her, which contain stereotypes about women who are Filipino. She will also describe the inappropriate, harmful, and offensive manner in which she alleges that Dr. Tyndall conducted the STD examination of her vaginal area, which left Danielle feeling confused and violated. As a result of Dr. Tyndall's misconduct and USC's failures to protect Danielle, today we filed a lawsuit against Dr. Tyndall and USC in Los Angeles County. We allege sexual battery in violation of California Civil Code 1708.5. Also battery, gender violence in violation of California Civil Code Section 52.4. Negligent hiring and retention. Negligence, failure to provide an STD exam devoid of sexually harassing and or sexually assaulting conduct. Fraudulent misrepresentation, negligent misrepresentation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent infliction of emotional distress. We're seeking compensation, compensatory damages, and punitive damages according to proof at trial. Danielle has demonstrated tremendous courage by coming forward to file this lawsuit and allowing her name to be used in pursuing it, even though it involves a discussion of what is private, sexual, and intimate issues. She has been willing to make this public because she feels that it's important, and she wants other young women to know that she and they were innocent victims. They are not to blame. Instead, it is Dr. Tyndall and USC which must be held accountable. This series of events also raises the important questions of what did USC know and when did they know it? Some of the answers to these questions have been provided to me by a former USC student who wishes to maintain privacy, and I will call her Jane Doe. She has provided me with a declaration, which I've handed out to you, which states the following. I was a student at the University of Southern California, USC, from 1988 until 1992, when I graduated. In or about 1991, I went to see a gynecologist at USC, Dr. Tyndall, for a pap smear. I was told to undress from the waist down, given a paper type cover for the upper half of my body, and told to lie down. I did so, putting my feet on the stirrups at the end of the examination table. Dr. Tindle walked into the examining room alone. He began to perform the examination, but then turned around and pulled out a camera from behind a box on his shelf. Dr. Tyndall began to take pictures of my genital area close up. He said it was a new way to do examinations instead of a pap smear because they could see things more closely. He then got up and started to walk backwards away from the table and began taking full body pictures of my private area. I was trying to cover my face with a paper cover. After I came out of the examination room, my then boyfriend was waiting for me. I started crying. I told him what Dr. Tyndall had done to me. He told me that I had to report it. He and I went to the medical director of the clinic, and I told him what Dr. Tyndall had done to me. The medical director then had a female nurse speak to me in case I had been too embarrassed to tell him everything. I repeated the same story to her. The medical director told me that he went to confront Dr. Tyndall, but Dr. Tyndall had denied it and denied having a camera. Because I had told the medical director where Dr. Tyndall had retrieved the camera, the medical director told me that he was able to locate the camera. Then the medical director stated that Dr. Tyndall exposed the film in the camera. About a week after the incident, I called USC's Women's Advocacy Office to file a complaint. Nothing ever came of it. After reporting the incident to the medical director, I had assumed that some action would be taken by USC. However, the next year, when I made an appointment for my annual pap smear, I was given an appointment with Dr. Tyndall. I told the person the whole story about what had happened the year before, and I told her I did not want to see Dr. Tyndall again and to schedule my appointment with someone else. And that's the end of her quote. Assuming these allegations made by witness Jane Doe are true, USC was told as early as 1991 about Dr. Tyndall's sexual misconduct because Jane Doe alleges that she reported it then to the clinical medical director, a female nurse, and USC's Women's Advocacy Office. The fact that USC failed to take appropriate action to protect students from Dr. Tyndall after that is inexcusable. Finally, USC has now set up a hotline to take calls from students or former students who allege that they've been victimized. One former student, that's Angela, who called that hotline is with us today. She will recount her experience when she called the hotline and share what she thinks victims should do instead of calling it. It is time for USC to conduct a completely independent investigation of how and why the university failed to protect its female students from Dr. Tyndall. Young women had every right to expect that they could trust USC and the gynecologists assigned to examine them and treat them. Women are extremely vulnerable when they undergo their most intimate but necessary examinations. They have every right to feel that their trust was betrayed as they underwent what appears to be unprofessional and sometimes extremely risky and unnecessary invasions of their bodies by someone who may have thought only of satisfying his own sexual needs rather than adhering to his professional responsibilities. We will vigorously litigate this lawsuit and may be filing others as well. We will not stop until the truth is known and we win justice for the USC women whose rights were violated. And now, I would like to introduce Danielle. I think I'll have you change seats with me. Okay, so you can be on. Why don't you sit right here?
Thank you.
And this is yours.
Hello, my name is Danielle Mohazab. I am currently a master's student studying communication management at USC. I enrolled at USC in the fall of 2015. I was 19 years old at the time. Around March of 2016, I called to make an appointment to see Dr. Patty Pinanong, a gynecologist at USC whom I had previously seen. Because Dr. Pinanong was unavailable, I was given an appointment to see Dr. Tindle. On April 4th, 2016, I went in for a standard STD test and to talk about medication. Dr. George Tindall and I sat in his office and began to discuss my medications. He had his laptop and looked up the medications. Dr. Tyndall asked my race. I said I was Filipina. I remember that his office was messy and that there were framed pictures of his wife, who is also Filipina. He wore unprofessional clothing, leather lace-up shoes, loose khakis, and a button-up short-sleeve shirt. He made sexual comments about me and said that I was pretty. I remember him relating me to his wife, saying that Filipinas are the smartest, most giving, and gentle people. He told me that Filipinas are good in bed. He also said that Filipinas are devoted to their partners and that they don't sleep with many people in their lifetime. He asked intimate sexual details about me and then related my answers to my being Filipina and saying, "I guess that's because you are mixed." Again, he had a creepy smile. Then we went into the exam room for my STD test. Again, it was just Dr. Tyndall and me. There was no chaperone or monitor present. He told me that Dr. Pinanong had conducted the STD tests incorrectly and inaccurately. The year before, when Dr. Pinanong gave me the STD exam, she provided the swab and asked me to insert it myself. She then closed the curtain in the room to provide me with privacy while doing that. On the other hand, Dr. Tyndall told me to undress from the bottom down. And he stood there watching while I did so. And he smiled. He then instructed me to lie on the examining table, which I did. I then put my feet into the stirrups. He gave me some paper to put on top of my upper legs. Without a glove, he put 2 fingers in me and felt around. He said, "I think we better use some lube," with a snide look on his face as he opened the packet of lube that he retrieved from the cabinet on the side of the room next to the patient chair. He felt around by moving his fingers around inside for a few minutes. He said that this was part of an STD test. He didn't use a speculum or any other medical tools. He then stuck the swab into me and smiled. He then put it in a vial and said that we were done. At the time, he made me feel extremely uncomfortable and violated. However, I trusted that USC would have a gynecologist who was performing STD exams properly. I was confused because of his criticism of Dr. Pinanong, but I trusted him because he was older than the prior gynecologist, and I therefore thought he would have more experience in performing STD exams properly. Because I was new to USC and trusted the institution, I thought that I could trust him. I am still in shock that USC had heard about Dr. Tindall's inappropriate conduct and had allowed him to continue practicing. Reportedly, USC was aware of Dr. Tindall's inappropriate conduct before I was even born. USC is a great school, but this should not have happened. This incident has resulted in my being less trusting of doctors altogether. I trusted USC as an institution, but USC has let me down. I am proud of these steps that the administration has now started taking. But I am looking for justice, not just for me, but for all victims. Thank you.
Change places.
Hello. My name is Angela Esquivel Hawkins. I was a 21-year-old undergraduate student at USC in 2006. In November of 2006, I had been sexually assaulted by a fellow USC student and went to student health to be examined and treated. It was then that I was seen by Dr. Tindle. Because I was traumatized, my recollection of the examination is vague, other than the fact that I do remember that Dr. Tindle had me in the exam room for a very long time. Last week, I sought to obtain copies of my medical records in an attempt to gather more information about the visit, but I learned from the Student Health Center that USC destroyed my records sometime between 2015 and 2017. This is very upsetting to me. I saw Dr. Tindle because I was violated by another man, and now I feel violated again, having learned that Dr. Tindle was assigned to treat me in the aftermath of a sexual assault when the university reportedly had knowledge of prior allegations of sexual harassment against him. It is horrifying to know that during such a vulnerable moment in my life, I was in the hands of a predator. Trying to piece together this traumatic time in my life has been completely re-traumatizing. However, I wanted to be here today in order to speak out in support of all of the women who were victimized by Dr. Tindle over the past 3 decades. I believe that we all feel a gross violation of trust that we placed in the university to protect and care for its students. USC has been asking victims to contact a hotline. I did so, but when I contacted them, I was told that the information that I was providing to the hotline was going to USC's legal team. I am very concerned because their legal team's interest is to protect the institution, not the victims. Instead, I decided to contact a victims' rights attorney, Gloria Allred, because she represents victims and not USC. I suggest that all victims contact a private attorney and not USC's hotline. I'm also very disturbed that USC has destroyed my medical records and perhaps the medical records of many other potential victims of Dr. Tindle. Shouldn't they have kept them because they knew that serious allegations of sexual harassment and other inappropriate conduct had been made against him?
Thank you. Okay. Why don't you sit here? You can stay there. Okay. Okay. Excuse me. I'll take these. All right, so we'll be happy to take some questions.
The board of directors at USC gave the president today a vote of confidence that he could handle the situation and, whatever else they said. Do you have a comment on that?
I don't have any comment on whether he should continue or not, but I'm sure there are going to be other facts that emerge as this investigation that we're doing, that others are doing, and that USC should be doing through independent investigators that should be taken into consideration by the board at USC, and then they can make an informed decision about what should happen in the future. Any other?
Why do you think these women coming forward were not believed, or is that your assertion? that there's a sexism here at the university, that underlings in the department, nurses, in fact, one we understand had to go to the rape crisis center for this to be alleviated.
You know, I can't speak to why appropriate action was not taken earlier to protect the women that apparently it took the Los Angeles Times investigation and perhaps some other information that USC received that caused them finally to decide that Dr. Tindle should no longer be employed by USC. I can't speak to why they failed to protect these women earlier when they had reports to about allegations that he had acted in an inappropriate way. All I can say is that sometimes the word of a woman, and particularly a young woman, is not afforded the value that it should be afforded, and that perhaps it is ignored. It is sad that sometimes it takes lawsuits and really good investigative journalism as well to force an institution to do what it should have done earlier. But as they say in the South, in some parts of the South, USC is going to have some explaining to do. And they're going to need to do that explaining of what they failed to do, what they knew when they knew it, why they didn't do what they should have done, could have done earlier. And they're going to have to do that in depositions, in civil lawsuits, and perhaps in other venues as well, depending on whether the legislature gets involved, whether the trustees have more questions that they need to answer in the future. You know, so I can't say, but now the women are empowered, these young women are empowered, these and others. I have been contacted by others whom I've not mentioned today, number of other young women, and we're going to review each set of facts very carefully and see if we are able to assist them. But it's time for transparency, not for hiding behind any set of rules. It's time, the public has a right to know what happened to these young women. Many of them are, the parents are very concerned about their daughters, and they need to know. They need a full explanation.
To Angela and Daniela, you know Dr. Tyndall will watch. What message would you like to send?
Yeah, they actually are not going to be answering any questions today, but, I mean, their message is what they described as what their experience was. So I'm sorry
Did
that
either one of them feel that it was just a waste of time if they went to anybody, higher authority, after they went through what they went through?
I'm sorry,
I
couldn't.
mean, and after this happened
Yeah.
to them, did they go to anyone to complain, or did they feel it would just be a waste of time?
Well, I mean, I can't comment any further on what Daniela did, but I will say for some of the women who contacted me, who were not present, whose cases we have not yet taken but are considering taking, for some of them, you know, they had never been to a gynecologist, or they had been maybe once, and they really didn't have a frame of reference, a context for what a gynecologist should be doing or not doing when examining a young woman. And so it's not till some years later, actually, till after the LA Times articles, that they realized that some of what was done is not standard protocol and should not have been done.
I think you mentioned it, but your two clients are not related to the other lawsuits that were filed.
That's
by the
correct.
other women. So
Yeah.
right now we have at least 7 women.
Okay, well, I'm not counting, I don't know, so.
Okay.
So, Gloria,
Yes, Angela has not filed a lawsuit at this time.
Gloria, can you tell us how many women you do have? Can you give us a number, how many you expect us to grow?
I can't give you a number because
Gloria, can
I just can't give you the number. I mean, this has just begun and we're being very careful. Right now we have Danielle And we have many others that we are speaking with who've contacted us, so we just can't give you a number at this time.
Gloria, can I just, USC seems to suggest that the director of the medical center, who's now deceased, dealt with some of these complaints, as they say, independently, and that the upper levels of the administration were unaware. What is your comment on that?
Well, I don't know if the deceased director reported or did not report to higher ups, or obviously the system is broken. If he didn't report, if he did report and no appropriate action was taken, then we have to ask why it was not taken. And so these are answers that we're going to need to explore in the course
of answer yet, as to
of
whether
just.
he did report or not.
I don't, because we just filed a lawsuit this morning. We do have a case number, which I believe we gave you. And so now we will be permitted to engage in discovery. I don't want to just find out what the facts are or the allegations by reading what is printed even by very fine investigative journalists. I need to find that out when people are under oath and they have to answer questions sitting here in this conference room or elsewhere about what they knew and when they knew it. But I do appreciate there are people contacting me with information, such as the Jane Doe, whose declaration I provided to you, and she'll also be willing to testify under oath when that time comes.
Lori, in light of what happened with the Dean of the Keck School of Medicine, when, in a follow-up to the gentleman's question, when the university says it only came to our attention, Dr. Tindle, last year, do you find that credible?
I really can't make a judgment about that. All I can say is that I read you the declaration of Jane Doe and what she alleges that she experienced back in 1991. And so we'll have to see what the facts are. I mean, I would say I have a lot of questions about it at the minimum. Michael, do you want to comment on that, or Dolores?
No.
Okay, all right.
Gloria, will Jane Doe be filing a lawsuit? Will you be filing a lawsuit on her behalf?
Jane Doe, the question is, will Jane Doe be filing a lawsuit? At this point, she's a witness. So we'll have to see if she becomes a plaintiff, but this was a long time ago. So there are issues having to do with the statute of limitations. But I think what she's reported is very important in terms of what USC knew at the time and knew decades ago, as Danielle has said, even before she was born, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, is there anything else? Okay, so we can stand up. This is a copy of the lawsuit, which you should have. Why don't we stand up here? And then, this is what Danielle, which we filed this morning in Los Angeles County Superior Court. And we do believe that, unlike some of the plaintiffs who filed lawsuits who may not be actually within the statute of limitations to proceed with their cases, we hope that they are, but they may not be. These are handled by other attorneys. That she is within the statute of limitations to proceed with her lawsuit on the theories that we have alleged.
When cases like this happen and people are able to file these suits, can they ever go back in time with somebody who was before the statute? And
It depends.
Correctly,
Yeah, it depends on the facts. It depends on the theory of law that they're alleging and what that statute of limitation is as applied to that particular theory.
so Jane Doe could potentially.
I mean, it really depends on what the facts are. But, statute of limitations is an affirmative defense. That's defendant would raise that. Michael, you want to say something? We'll sit. Okay,
Yeah,
we can
just-
sit down, and Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have one in response to that one.
I'll stand up, you can sit down.
The facts in this case are quite unusual in that the allegations are that many women were examined, and they thought, as Gloria said, that this, given their age specifically and their background in these types of exams, and this may have been the first, this was, quote, normal. And they didn't have nothing to judge it against. Only the argument, what happened is, as to a number of them, the first time they even maybe had a realization that this was abnormal, let's call it, is a few weeks ago or a week ago when the LA Times article brought this to the front page and to their attention, at which point they started suffering their major emotional reaction, damages. So the argument can be made and will be made and is being made that the statute of limitations, even for the, I'll call it, events that occurred 10, 20, maybe even 1991 maybe, that the statute starts to run as of the date, let's call it the LA Times article appeared, because they didn't know. These young women didn't know that there was anything abnormal. How could they have even thought there was a claim when they thought this was, quote, normal? Now they're suffering they realize this is abnormal. So it's a unique situation where something wrong was done to you as a victim, and you didn't know it was wrong until years and years later. And the discovery of the wrong occurred in May of 2018, not in 2006 or 1996. So that's going to be ultimately, I'm sure, an issue of law, an issue to be decided by the courts. But clearly our position, and I'm sure the other victims' positions, is going to be that none of the statutes have run. The statute of limitations have not run because it doesn't start until May of 18, because nobody knew anything wrong was done to them until then.
That was basically what I was trying to
Yeah, I know that, and that's why I wanted to answer you.
I didn't know how to word it properly.
But that's how we're going to advance that theory. We're advancing that theory on a lot of the causes of action for Danielle, as Gloria said. On one of them, we don't have to. There's one theory that we're within the statute.
Yeah.
Without going through that kind of a delayed discovery, if you want to call it.
Is there any way of knowing how many patients he may have seen over the years?
There's not, I mean, just from what we read and you read, but it seems that how many patients? Most likely, could be thousands. How many he may have done this to, we don't know. But he was there for a long time.
And legally, does the school have an obligation to? She's alleging that her records were destroyed. Is there any legal reason why they must not destroy those records?
I'm not aware. I don't know the answer to that. We haven't done research, so there may be, may not be. We can't opine. I don't know the answer to that.
Aren't they legally required to report the doctor to the California Medical Board?
Well, they allege that they're not legally required because they're not a clinic or a hospital. So whether that allegation is well-founded or not, we'll have to see. But that is their position.
There's a lot of issues here.
Yeah, there are many issues, some issues of first impression. And it may be that there are going to be some changes in law that are going to be necessitated, that are going to be necessary as a result of the litigation issues. But we're going to pursue this. This is just really wrong, and all of us as women know that there are not many of us who look forward to going for a gynecological examination. It's like, but we know it's necessary, so we do it. And this just really makes me cringe, and it's very upsetting because, especially for these young women, it may make many of them, more hesitant to go in the future. And that could present a risk of harm to their health because they need to go. And their husbands and significant others need them to go. And their future children or children need them to go. So this is why we take this very seriously.
Is this just the tip of the iceberg then, Gloria?
Well, I think the number of lawsuits that have been filed to date, yes, clearly are the tip of the iceberg, and I'm sure that there are going to be others as well. who are going to be asserting claims. And this is just massive, and, you know, it just has to be taken very seriously.
Do you compare this to the USA gymnastics scandal?
Well, I don't know how many are going to be involved in this. I did represent an individual, a gymnast, in that scandal, and I'll just say that this is the very beginning, and I'm sure we're going to hear quite a bit more about this. Yes.
May I
Those
make-
were minors. That's one big difference. That is, some of them were adult survivors of child sexual abuse by Dr. Larry Nasser. In fact, I think most were. But it's, you know, it's very serious whether you're a young adult experiencing this or whether you are a child. It's very harmful. I mean, it's always more serious if you're a child, but it's still very serious if you're a young adult. And USC has a very fine reputation. I actually, Michael and I were lecturers there, 40, 50 years ago. But not since.
Before Daniela's parents were born.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it's a very fine school, but, you know, they have to do a lot better where it comes to women's reproductive health issues.
May I make a comment?
If you wish to, you want to move over to the
Do you
microphone?
want to go in the middle?
Sure.
Go in the middle.
Okay, well,
Well, I can
no, move
stand.
her chair over, Michael,
Move my
please. Okay,
chair.
good.
Oh,
There you go.
yes.
All right, now you go. Thank you. Go ahead.
I believe that USC still is a top academic institution. I do not regret any of the classes that I've taken, and I still support each and every one of my professors and deans who have not known or been aware of the case. I believe that Annenberg, the School for Communication and Journalism, is still at the top of the world because of the academics. I am disheartened and disappointed by those who knew what was going on with Dr. Tindall and failed to properly report it. Again, Dr. Tindall began having allegations against him before I was born. That's a big fact, before I was born. And I urge the upper hands at USC to take forward our motto. I want you to be courageous, ambitious, and step forward and fight on towards what we deserve. I know most people I've met at USC to be strong and to have the right mindset and to have people's emotions in mind. I do not believe that anyone that I've met beyond Dr. Tindall at USC as being mean-hearted, rude, or having any intention of hurting anyone. So again, USC, please continue to take the steps towards helping all of the victims. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.